Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we return to the Marvel series for a trip to Bespin this time around. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler, and let me rewind here for a moment through my own personal Star Wars reading history. When I was young, I did pick up some issues of the Marvel series, but I was a kid at the time. It was basically me begging at the grocery store, Mom, can I please have this? And I had a couple of issues that were basically adaptations of Return of the Jedi. I believe it was issue number 2 of the 4-issue miniseries, plus one of those big magazine-sized editions. I actually still have it sitting in the other room. I'll show you that when I go through the adaptation of Return of the Jedi at some point. But the first original stories that I ever got in comic form for Star Wars were in the pages of the post-Return of the Jedi Marvel era. This is issue number 82, Diplomacy here. That's the first one, though my original copy is all kinds of crazy beat up. This is the nice copy that I got when I eventually picked up the whole Marvel run when I was in college. That meant that all of my experiences as a Star Wars reader in the comics when I was very, very young were all the later stories from Marvel. My favorite stories of the time was a two-parter, starting with this issue, No Zeltrons, and if you've read these, you probably know what's coming. Its follow-up, issue 96, Duel with the Dark Lady. And this was a big deal. This was Lumaya versus Luke, serious butt-kicking. I mean, it's pretty much just a butt-kicking issue. Not as much story as there is just whooping going on, essentially. What that meant, though, was that my first experience with Shira, Elan, Kola, Brie, say that 3 times fast, was in her Lumaya form, and I had no idea who this was. I mean, you get to the end of Duel with the Dark Lady, her mask is shattered off, and Luke recognizes her, and I'm like, who's this lady? Am I supposed to know her from somewhere? Again, I was a kid. I had no idea what it was I was reading. I thought each issue was pretty much self-contained, even though that didn't make sense because I was looking at a 2-part issue. Maybe I was not that bright as a Star Wars reader as a child. Suffice to say, I never got a chance to see the build-up to that character. The build-up to her becoming the Dark Lady of the Sith, as she's often referred to. The story we're looking at here doesn't focus on her, but it's the beginning of a build-up in the Marvel series over several issues to the big moments where Shira becomes a major player both before and after Return of the Jedi. The issues we're looking at this time are issue number 56, Coffin in the Clouds, and issue number 57. It says Battle on Bespin. It's called Hello Bespin Goodbye. Kind of sounds like an old Humphrey Bogart movie or something like that. Now you can find these issues currently in the pages of Star Wars Omnibus A Long Time Ago, Volume 3. None of these were in that prestige format series, though many of the ones coming up will be. It's a story that was actually set up back in the previous issue, Pliff. We have essentially Lando telling Luke that he's heading out, and then Leia goes off on the mission to Arbra, and Luke is left there essentially alone to file reports on their most recent missions. His exact words, I wish I was going with him. Heck, I'd even settle for being with the survey crew on Arbra, but that skirmish we fought on Shiva came so soon after our escape from the Tarkin that no one had time to file a detailed debriefing of either. And guess who's been elected? Well, that of course is referring back to that 2-part storyline on Shiva 4, and of course referring back to the taking the Tarkin storyline there. So we sort of set this up, and at the very end of Pliff, we have a 1-page epilogue where Lando lands on Cloud City to find that it looks like it's completely abandoned. That is the setup for this 2-part story. Essentially, Lando arrives and discovers that the entire place has been abandoned. Apparently, the Ugnaughts, trying to get business back for themselves down on the surface of Bespin, which at this point, people are looking at it going, wait, there's a surface of Bespin? Really? Yeah, apparently there is. In order to get some of the business back for themselves and stand up to the Empire that's been controlling the city ever since Lando and the others left back in The Empire Strikes Back, they've set up bombs around Cloud City to essentially cause enough explosions to cause the entire city to come crashing down. And at this point, Lando thinks he's all alone. Though it turns out that Lawbot is still there. You know, the dude with the headband-looking thing going on. Lawbot is still there, as is an Imperial team led by a single Imperial officer. And essentially what they have to try to do is find a way to save the city. And using Lawbot, they're able to do that because, you see, Lawbot is telepathic. Yes, Lawbot, dude with the headband-looking thing on his head, Lawbot is apparently extremely telepathic. Telepathic enough to turn off these bombs basically just with his mind. Okay? Lawbot reaches out with his mind, telepathically, telekinetically, fixes it so the bombs will not explode. But of course, as soon as he has done that, as soon as he has finished work for Lando, or as soon as he has finished doing the work Lando has asked of him, Lando and the Imperial officer that he had been willing to work with temporarily wind up parting ways in violent fashion, as you'd expect, because the Imperial kicks Lando off of Cloud City and he goes ing down towards the surface. Fortunately, his fall, which continues rather nicely on the first page of the second one, hello Bespin, goodbye. His fall is stopped because Lawbot grabs essentially a jetpack and goes down and grabs him to save him. But they eventually wind up on the surface of Bespin with the Ugnaughts. And they meet King Oz, the king of the Ugnaughts on Bespin, and work their magic to try to find a way to take down the Imperials. And they arrive just in time, standing up to the Imperials, clashing with the Imperials, for a group of rebels, including Luke and another pilot we'll get to in a moment, have wound up also coming to Cloud City looking for him, and in the battle that ensues, Luke uses crazy X-Men style, I'm going to kill everybody! That's not actually what he says. He says, you have 30 seconds to escape or you'll all die, but that's pretty much the same thing. Luke winds up blowing up the primer charges on them, makes it look like the whole city's going to be destroyed. The Imperials get the heck out of there, and the city is saved by Luke's ruse. It makes for an interesting answer to the question, whatever happened on Cloud City once Lando left back in The Empire Strikes Back, because we hadn't seen it since then. But it also serves as an interesting introductory story to something that's going to have major ramifications on the EU. In the first issue of this two-parter, when Luke and the other pilot go to look for Lando, we see Luke with this new female pilot that we've never seen before. And the conversation goes, well, I would be, that is, willing to make another run with Leia around the perimeter on Arbra. Luke is saying, well, I would be, but Lando hasn't reported in from Bespin yet, and I'm a little worried. So Shira and I are going to see if he's okay. To which Leia replies, oh, well, that was very kind of you to volunteer, Lieutenant Brie, though they spell it wrong in this issue, B-R-E-I instead of B-R-I-E. I know Commander Skywalker will appreciate your companionship. To which Shira replies, I try to please, Princess. And Leia's response is the rather droll, yes, I'm sure you do. It's the first instance of seeing Shira, and they're already building up this romantic tension of Luke and Shira having sort of a flirtatious connection between them, and Leia not being sure what to make of it. Then, of course, we see the two of them fighting together on Cloud City. We think nothing of it. It's just a new Rebel character who's been introduced. But boy, oh boy, will she become a huge character down the line. It's probably the most momentous character introduction in the Marvel series. I cannot overstate that. The Marvel series had a tendency to tell stories that are relatively self-contained. Few story arcs and then it's done. The Tag family, for instance, in Archie Goodwin's run, that stuff was all fairly self-contained. It has very little impact outside of the Marvel series. Then we get David Michelinie, I always say that wrong. David Michelinie comes in here with Walt Simonson again, and they're introducing Shira. She will be a major part of their run here on the series as they get sort of a broader story arc going than we're used to seeing in the Marvel series for most of its run. That character, Shira, who eventually becomes the Dark Lady of the Sith, Lumaya, just sort of disappeared off the radar for many years after the Marvel series ended. She's a big part of the post-Return of the Jedi stories as Lumaya, but then that's it. We eventually got some source material that referenced her, for instance, as an Emperor's Hand. I believe it was The Emperor's Pawns was the name of the article. We saw Lumaya, Dark Star of the Empire, briefly make a comment or two showing her and what she's doing in the time around the years after Return of the Jedi. We don't see a whole heck of a lot about Lumaya for a very long time, except in source material. People said, boy, wouldn't it be cool if she came back? But no, they never do that. The Marvel series for a long time was considered sort of iffy in canon anyway. Unless they totally bring it back in, that just causes more confusion. Surely they're not going to bring Lumaya back, but boy, wouldn't it be cool for Shira / Lumaya to make another appearance. And then came 2006. And the beginning of this book series, my favorite book series in the entirety of Star Wars publishing, Star Wars Legacy of the Force. Starting with book 1 by Aaron Alston, Betrayal. This is the book series in which Jacen Solo becomes Darth Caedus. Okay, or Darth Caedus, I guess is how you're supposed to say it. I always say Caedus. He becomes Darth Caedus, and it's done under the tutelage of Lumaya, the Dark Lady of the Sith from the Marvel series back again. That book series changes virtually everything. It upends the status quo of the Star Wars saga in its era, post-New Jedi Order, pre-Fate of the Jedi. It is huge. But it ties back into this very subtle, very easy character introduction, that blink and you'll miss it introduction of Shira, Ilan, Kola, Brie, here in the pages of issue 56 of the Marvel series. So is it a cool story? Sure. Cool to see what happens on Bespin. But it is essential as an introduction here. I would say that this, because of it answering the questions about Cloud City and introducing Shira, it is an essential read. And we don't say that much for the Marvel stuff. It's actually essential for Marvel, but it's also essential for modern readers, which is almost unheard of in this era of Star Wars publishing. So, check out Coffin in the Clouds and Hello Bespin Goodbye if you get a chance. Again, you can find them more easily in this omnibus here, but you want to follow Shira's story because then you'll really get a sense of why Luke is so affected when he learns that Lumaya is back in Legacy of the Force. Great character development here. I love the way the Shira stuff plays out in the Marvel series, along with the Lumaya stuff when she comes back as her new incarnation. We'll see more of that as we go along here and sort of take this broader story arc and make sure to handle it in smaller bite-sized story arc chunks so as not to overwhelm this series all at once with a whole lot of Lumayadom. Is that a word? Now it is. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.